and we're starting by going with paragraph 2, items A, B and C. So, yep. So, before we get started, the Chief Executive just wants to make a correction.
So earlier in the meeting, in discussion of the debate around de-sexing cats, additional resource, the comment was made that there's 300 more staff have been employed since 2014. The 2018 10-year annual report showed that we had 1,143 staff. That's not full-time equivalents, but staff. In 2014, we had 1,099. That's 44 additional staff in the last 4 years. That's made up by the fact we brought CitySafe back into the organisation. And so there's an offsetting reduction in costs associated with contracting. We've had additional staff for the zoo as a response to the tragedy that occurred there a number of years ago and our health and safety response there. Excuse me, and we've had additional health and safety staff as well, plus there's other staff in different areas. For 2019, there's incremental staff associated with the capital program. We've got the largest ever capital program, and they've all been approved by council through an annual plan on annual report phase. So I thought I'd correct that incorrect statement. Thank you.
A question. Is there any truth to the suggestion by the Chief Executive that organising councillors is like herding cats?
Okay, that does not require an answer.
I'd like to respond. But I put forward $100,000 for a de-sexing program. Thank you very much. Okay, bang bang. Stop being there.
Okay, enough's enough. All right, so I'll move A, B and C of item 9.
We've just been advised that this figure here is incorrect and staff are working on amending. So Sean will be aware of this, so maybe just, we still do A, B and C, but perhaps let Sean speak to it and David speak to it.
Okay, so I'll just ask, I understand there's a correction to be made on item under I, so I'll just hand it over to staff.
Thank you, Andrew. So just before, so you're right, so staff are just working on updating one of the numbers in that from the development contribution revenue adjustment. Just before we kind of get into that, if I may sort of just make a couple of opening remarks, and David wants to do the same. So I just want to be clear on what we're doing today in the context of the overall annual plan. So the annual plan, as you know, is where we set the budget for 2019-20 and identify changes to the 10-year plan budget. So throughout the annual plan process, we have categorised the changes to the annual plan, to the budget, as either budget adjustments or proposals. And so I just want to be really clear that through the finance committees and council meetings so far this year, we've made some of those budget adjustments already. And so today, what the decisions that we are seeking today are some further budget adjustments and then confirmation of proposals which council has conditionally approved previously. So there's some further budget adjustments, and that's in recommendations B and C, and then there's the set of proposals which are the resolutions beyond that. So those proposals have all been considered previously by council and have been approved for the purposes of preparing the draft annual plan budget, which is what we are now considering, and so we just need those proposals confirmed today. Staff are just updating the list of recommendations, the list of a motion which the Mayor has signalled he will table, which will include the cat de-sexing proposal at the bottom of the list of the other proposals. There's also a small update to the DC revenue adjustment. If on page 44 and 45 of the report under financial strategy, so those recommendations are noting recommendations. So the councillors are being asked to approve the budget adjustments and the proposals, and then note the impacts that those decisions have on the financial strategy. So on the 2019-20 year, in what is shown as recommendation K, and then on the 10-year financial strategy, which is shown in recommendation L. And then last thing I'll say is, so following today's meeting, the budget can be finalised and staff will then prepare the annual plan proper, and that will be presented for adoption on the 20th of June. So there'll be a briefing prior to that where councillors will get to see the draft annual plan document, and then council meeting on the 20th of June to adopt it. David wants to make a few comments around the financial strategy, so I'll just get him to speak to that.
Thanks, Sean. I've got a brief presentation, 3 or 4 slides, just to basically remind us as to where we're at since the last time we had a look at the financial strategy. One of the things you'll notice for those that have been on council for a number of trienniums, this annual plan is somewhat a little different in the sense that with the adoption of the Finance Committee's view on the Financial Strategy Monitoring Report, we've actually had a picture of the full 10 years and any adjustments made on a 6-weekly cycle, as Sean's alluded to. So I wanted to just ground us in terms of where we're at today. The last Finance Committee, if we just go to the next slide, Christy, what we're looking at there is the last time the financial... the top graph is off the Finance Committee, last Finance Committee on the 9th of April. I have downloaded this presentation on Diligent and OneDrive, so it is in front of you this morning. So it is there, but if I just run through, the key thing here is that this is showing the movement in the financial strategy around debt to revenue from the last Finance Committee to now. So the key point I want you to take away from this slide is that there's, with regard to the proposals and the topics that you'll be talking about today, there's not a significant movement in the terms of the debt to revenue. Christy, if we can just move to the next slide. Net debt, you'll also see there's the only difference really is relating to capital items that might be deferred. And you've got some visibility of that in the annual plan report today. And if you go to the final slide, I suppose this is the one that differs a little bit from the Finance Committee, and there's a number of topics that we've brought through in terms of the annual plan. You'll note at the Finance Committee there was some emerging issues that were talked about. One of those, the significant one, was depreciation. We had booked in this this fiscal year some aspects of depreciation associated with the waters revaluation. But in terms of going forward, we made a note that we still needed to review our forecast for depreciation for the balance of the 10-year plan. They're also noted in the Finance Committee were a number of topics alongside that, risks associated with NZTA funding that we still have with regard to our financial strategy, and we're working with NZTA ensuring we can replicate what we have in our plans in terms of the subsidies that we get from them. And of course you'll be aware of Arthur Porter Drive. Arthur Porter Drive is a topic that you've been versed in terms of a number of conversations, and those amount in terms of the cost to rectify the topics around Arthur Porter Drive are not yet baked into this annual plan. We do not know and are unable to quantify the size of that. There is some litigation in place, as you're aware, and we'll bring that through the Finance Committee on that 6-weekly cycle as we continue to update this plan even after today. If we just go to the last slide, I just want to highlight a few topics that are sort of derivatives of that balancing the books change. There's a few things that we've noted this year through the Finance Committee, additional rates you'll be aware of in terms of over budget. And I've just put the first 3 years, the second, third and fourth year there, noting that after year 3 we'll be in another LTP cycle and everything will be up for review again in terms of... the second year is the year we are working on now? Second year is what we're working on now with the annual plan. So I just thought some highlights. I mean, of course, we have lower debt because of deferrals of capital expenditure, but also our revenue year to date is $7 million over our budget, which also contributes to lower debt, as is our expenses, $2.5 million lower than what we'd forecast. So you'll see in that balancing the books for the first year in your packs, in your annual plan packs, there's actually a $10 million swing in terms of where we thought would be for this year in the long-term plan and where we're currently tracking. Some of that favourability is because we've actually pushed out some costs into later years. If we have a look at the unfavourable pieces, depreciation I've just talked about, and I'll come back to it in a minute. But in year one, we had the founders demolition that is just pushed into year 3. And we also had the municipal pools demolition, which has been pushed from year 1 to year 2. We also know about the cleaning contract increases, the insurance cost increases, and there's an item in the paper to be talked about today around alternate infrastructure financing, a project that is going to be led by Blair Bowcourt, and kind of talks to the last paper around the cost of growth and who's going to pay for growth, and looking at innovative ways in which council can support that growth in the community. Depreciation, going back to depreciation, one of the things that occurs around depreciation is revaluations, and that depreciation increase in cost is predominantly around revaluations. I talked about the waters revaluation of at least $3.5 million. Of that, $4 million is associated with a higher valued water asset for the city. Just to give you some idea, our water assets are close to $1.5 billion in terms of worth. And so when we revalue, $3.5 million is a lot of money, but in comparison to the total value of the asset, it's somewhat relative. That 3.5 obviously carries through the whole 10-year plan. So the next amount there is associated with $6 million is associated with some capital deferrals, as is the $4 million in year 2. And in terms of the $9 million in year 4, that also is about deferrals. We also have budgeted in year 3 a transport asset revaluation and the impact, what we assume that would be, and it's another $2 million. So to give you some idea in terms of the net worth of our transport assets, it's close to $1 billion. So in terms of, we always talk about the city's assets being over $3 billion. A significant part of our assets, or part of that portfolio, is water assets and transport assets. Very hard to predict. Note when we do revaluations, we're not valuing it based on the material of the day. When we put those assets in the ground, we're valuing it on the basis of if we had to replace those assets with today's technology and today's costs, what would that be? And so obviously if we lift the value of the total asset, then the amount of depreciation over the economic life that's left to run for that asset will need to increase. So I guess I just wanted to lay the foundation of what you're looking at today in terms of the financial strategy, build a bridge from the Finance Committee through to now, and really just answer any questions you might have around these topics at a high level, noting that we will go into those conversations around proposals, etc., in the annual plan as we work through this report. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. Just 2 questions in the operating expenditure adjustment graph on page 43. The cleaning contract cost increase.
Yep.
On the graph, it was 218, which is 218,000, which I sort of recall was roughly what we approved. But on the screen, it looked like it was sitting around 8 or 7.
Yeah, it's about 757 all up. So that 200 was the additional over the contract amount that was going to increase, and that related to the minimum wage adjustment.
Right.
So the full amount is 750.
Okay. And just the next line down, the alternative funding finance project.
Yep.
I know we had the briefing about that, and Blair acknowledged that we need some resource on that and that sort of thing. I thought the figure you mooted was closer to 250.
No, I actually said 500.
Okay.
I said 500 then, and Blair went away and did some work, and that
Sort of inflation proofed it a bit.
no, So that was an initial briefing, and then when we moved to try and understand exactly what the cost would be, there's a mix of professional costs that we would get as well as some staff costs. And, you know, Blair went back and had a look at the cost of the Housing Infrastructure Fund and the support that we needed to make sure that we had a robust process through that. So that, and that brought tremendous benefit to the city, and this is around the cost. Noting that it's a provision that we would need to come back to council with regard to a report on this.
And would that be a proposed annual cost?
No, that's a one-off cost.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Andrew. Just on the same page,
Which page are you on, Councillor Angela?
43.
Thank you.
The fixed term resources for risk security.
What is that? Is that a staff member?
So two resources, one around Lagoima, which I'm not sure if your question extends to Lagoima. We had that paper the other day around the remit to LGNZ, but we have a significant...
Oh, yes, yep.
Yeah, and we have a significant increase in the number and the types of requests we're getting.
Yep.
And to keep elected members and council safe, we wanted to get a fixed term resource in there to manage that volume.
You mean a staff member?
Yeah.
Say that. Human being.
Yeah, okay. We want to get a human being for 12 months.
Fixed term resource.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Sorry. Yes, so for that, in terms of risk security, what that relates to is council taking an opportunity on the back of some security issues around the country, is doing if you like, a gap analysis around council facilities in terms of the level of security that we currently have, what our level of risk is, identify whether there's a gap between the setup that the city has as opposed to what we should have, and come back to elected members with some confidence around, or some knowledge around, is there anything else that we could do to keep our public more safe around events and
So
and other
that's,
topics?
I think that's touched on in the H3 report on for finance this Thursday, isn't it? That's what Sean Murray's talking about.
He'll talk about some of that, yes. So this is
Yeah.
more of a coordinated human being for 12 months to
Thanks.
to provide a framework
Yeah.
that would be a bare minimum for us.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Robb.
Thank you, Chair. The chart that you put up just before with the plus and minuses, is it possible next time we see that to get a little bit of an indication, particularly over the next 3 years where I see we won't be balancing our books, to get a breakdown between budget underspends, budget overspends and new spending in an aggregate form, just because, you know, often we talk about spending on new projects coming out of existing budgets, and sometimes they're new spends. And of course, we never get to see the budgets that are underspent.
Yeah,
and I guess mixed up in, you know, you've got a $9 million increase in depreciation in year 4, but in year 4 in your chart, the actual loss is about $3 million for the year, whereas depreciation's gone up by $9 million over the 3 years.
Yeah. So there's offsetting.
No, I appreciate that, but it would be good if we could, if it's not too big a job, to get a look at those other three, and there may be other categories I haven't thought of.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll take a look at how we can do that. We do have the significant forecast adjustments schedule that's in the Finance Committee associated with the Financial Strategy and Monitoring Report, which identifies that. But in terms of flagging it as a new spends as opposed to shifting from one year to the next through to something,
and underspending and overspending within budget.
Yeah, and certainly the annual monitoring report does a good job at identifying where we're overall underspending for this fiscal year. In terms of looking at the say like the 3 years out view, we can have a look to see where the key items are and give a better picture of that.
And the second question is really the concern about depreciation going up by $4 million next year, $6 million the following year, and $9 million in terms of the impact that it has on balancing our books. And it just concerns me that that figure on its own, if we're recovering that from underspending somewhere else, we're kind of fooling ourselves on a short-term basis that we're still heading towards balancing our books. I'm just, does it concern you from a management perspective that a $9 million increase in depreciation over the next 3 years could on its own, if we stick to wanting to balance the books, lead us to another rate increase when we come to do the next long-term plan, which may be in the vicinity of, the 7 to 10% that would be needed to recover that increased depreciation at that particular time?
Depreciation increases always concern me, and like you, I'm concerned at the size of that variance. As you know, with regard to the council efficiencies, the $94 million savings target, we're working very hard to be able to offset some of those costs.
Yep.
I'm not in a position to be concerned at this stage in terms of any impact on our 10-year plan rate promise to our community. I would think we would go and be looking significantly at ways we can cut our costs to offset that.
Yeah, but there's also a worry that if we do cut our costs, we might not be looking after our assets as we promised in the long term.
We'll never not look after our assets. I'm talking about reimagining local government and doing things differently.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Just a couple of probably very basic questions, one regarding double negatives and brackets and the likes. But first of all, on page 43, the election cost, that's 100 grand over what we're expecting, is that right?
Yeah, so that relates to no election being held for the District House Board.
Okay. All right, so we're assuming that's going to go here. And regards point 27 on page 47, this NZTA subsidy for the Te Awa Cycleway and the additional footpath revenue, am I right with the brackets, that's actually money we weren't expecting that is coming in?
That's right.
Thank you. Great, that's all I had.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. On page 44, the bottom headline is the financial strategy. The first bullet point has an operating surplus of 110 million.
Yeah, so that's not balancing the books, that's just
No,
total
I understand
accounting.
that. So we're going to have an accounting profit, so to speak, of 110 million.
That's the addition of the 10 years. Oh, sorry,
This says at the 1920 financial position.
Yep.
Look at me and go, yep. We're going to have an accounting profit of 110 million.
Yeah, so DCs and that includes all up revenue.
We've got those financial instruments as well, and there's all those accounting adjustments that go through.
Okay.
All the
So to bring that back down to the balancing the books thing, because that balancing books is about zero, well, close enough to zero. So there's 110.
This is for next year. Yeah. So
Yeah, $110 million of DCs which we take out of
any capital item,
all those
subsidies,
other
vested assets.
NZTA stuff we take out. So that's
Vested
what
assets.
gives us the $110 million accounting thing. Even with the higher, well, you've answered the question. Even with the higher depreciation, all that sort of stuff as well.
Yep, those numbers are in.
Okay.
But bear in mind that this is year 2, so the year 2 balancing the books that I showed, all that's in your books is minus 6.
The green figures, that are reforecasted figures. The green figures show that we're minus 6, minus 7, minus 3.
That's right. Yes. That's right.
Okay, just a very big figure that it's
Okay, so we're
surprising.
moving A, B and C, which has been moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ryan. We'll go to debate. Councillor Angela. Okay, we'll go to the board to vote. Councillor Gary.
I'm not sure if this is the right time to bring it up, I suppose it is. But there have been a number of, the overall context of this budget is still, as far as I can see, as we did a year ago with our 10-year plan, was try and find extra revenue rather than looking at genuine opportunities to use I'm concerned that there's a number of things, i.e. the cleaning contract, CBD parking, eyesight, things like that, where we have, I think, had opportunities to eliminate services that we are providing to our community that are not providing good value for money, that would not survive any rational cost-benefit analysis, and those things we're continuing on with. So, and I've just, those things I've just said there, which between them, increasing the cleaning contract, which is 300,000, the cancelling the 2 hours free parking, which would be about $2 million, sorry, $4.6 million, eyesight, which would be $800,000 to $900,000 per year. Those things in themselves would almost allow us to reduce the way I calculate it, would be a reduction of about 3.2% in rates, which would almost eliminate the 3.8% rate increase, all other things being equal. So I don't think we have tried hard enough, and I don't think we've taken enough time to consider the value to our community versus the cost to our community of those 4 items at least. And there will be a number of other items in our expenditure which I think we simply do not meet a rational cost-benefit analysis. So I will find it very hard to support this.
Okay, members, so just to be aware, we're voting on what's on the board with the changes, not what's on your paperwork.
Thanks.
Just so to be clear, the only change to A, B and C from what's in your book is that bit highlighted in yellow.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote. No talking, please.
The motion is declared carried, 11 for, 1 against.
So we're now moving to proposals D through to K on the new changes, including the CAT desexing, which are on diligence and have been distributed on separate paper. So I'm proposing moving D through to K, unless somebody wants to pull anything out to debate it separately. Okay.
What's in our books has now been replaced by the starting from proposal D
through to K is
through down to K, is it? Okay.
Yes. So I'll move D through to K, seconded by Councillor Jeff. We're going to discussion. Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I'm just wondering if you'd take K out, because it's not something I'd support.
Yes, so we'll change that motion from D through to J.
And just a couple of questions.
Okay.
Thank you. So just
Sorry, Angela. So what, you haven't done an amendment. You've just asked us to separate that out as a different vote. Is that what you've just done?
And a separate discussion.
Yep, thank you.
And in fact, we'll include questions and debates, if that's okay, Councillor Angela, in K, but we'll take it as a separate part of the vote.
Great, thank you. So I just have a question on the housing fund. Hang on, sorry, where am I?
F and G.
F and G, beg your pardon? F and G. F and G. So, I just want to understand the process, a couple of process questions actually. First of all, this is a departure from the resolution through the LTP, which was a contestable fund to help deliver more social housing in the city. As I understand from the briefings, because we haven't had detailed information on a community land trust in a formal setting, are we satisfied that the departure from the LTP resolution is okay here and that we won't have to go out and consult? Because of course we consulted through the LTP on that fund?
So when council first considered this item at a previous meeting, we assessed the proposal for significance, and staff recommendation was that it didn't constitute a significant change from the 10-year plan, and council resolved not to consult on this as part of the annual plan. So that decision has effectively been made by council. So, okay,
I guess my concern is the principle of the resolution was social housing, but from the informal briefings and things that we've had, this is not to build social housing, is it? This is to build houses for people to buy. Is that what this? That's correct, isn't it? In terms of a principle for the fund.
Yes.
No, wait a sec. So there's still a lot of scoping to be done in terms of exactly what this is about. The principle behind this is still under the broad arches of a social housing.
It is still.
It is.
Okay.
The bones, so this is a placeholder, the bones of what it's going to look like, and it still needs to come back to council for discussion. But the premise is some form of social housing. If there is to be, similar to Queenstown it may be, whereby the houses are sold but the land is still owned, we're still working through the nuts and bolts of what it's going to look like. So there's no structure yet to support this. It's just a placeholder for the budget so that we can come back at a later stage and address that.
Okay. So can that...
Hamilton Build.
I didn't get any of that from the resolution, that there would be, you know, the parameters of what the fund is going to be used for, criteria and all of that. I didn't get that from here. So is there something that needs to be in this a little bit more to say that that stuff will be worked up? Or are you confident that we will just do that as business as usual through briefings and there'll be paper to council and...
If I may, Mayor Andrews,
I guess what you're approving in terms of the annual plan is a budget, is a budget approval. So the annual plan is about approving a change to the 10-year plan budget, which is what this is doing.
So I've just asked the Democracy Manager to look up the resolution on this for us, so
sure.
And to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I was just saying we are locating at the moment. So you recall
apologies.
that there was a resolution that had a little bit more specificity about the creation of the, or reference to a lands trust. So we'll find you the precise wording for that, and that way you can see what the live resolution is around the next steps and actions to answer your questions.
Okay.
So it's...
So, yeah, look, I'm really familiar with how these processes work. I understand this is approval for funding. I'm just asking some questions and getting some surety that this will follow a really robust process. Yep. Council will be involved.
Absolutely. I mean, this has effectively been elected member driven to this point as well. So we'll continue that approach.
Okay.
Are you satisfied?
The report is coming back. A detailed report is coming back 27 June. Thank you, Deputy Chief Executive.
Okay. Excellent.
Good to stretch your legs, sir.
Okay, so we won't chase up that other resolution. I think it's just been covered by General Manager Lance. Councillor Robb.
Yeah, look, my concern is exactly the same, and the way I read G is that it almost suggests that the whole $2 million is available for a community housing trust and nothing else. And I would be particularly keen, given that we're still waiting for that report to come back, that to me is one of the options that we have in terms of how that $2 million gets spent. So I would like to ask for the words to be available for a community land trust to be removed.
Yep.
So that we're actually moving the money back into
general funds.
Earlier years, so it's available, but we haven't as yet made up our mind as to where it might actually end up going.
Yeah. So firstly, this isn't a significant item from an engagement point of view, so we don't need to consult on what we need to do with the money. When the report comes back on 27th of June, you're free to do what you like.
But aren't we committing ourselves in this motion
but it's not
that it goes to a...
but what I'm saying is that we may tag it in the budget in that respect. There's nothing stopping you putting that money to whatever choice you choose, but if you want to give greater flexibility and put an amendment forward, and that's probably the best way of doing it. Councillor Dave, do you have a You don't care either way? No, that's fine. If who moved it's happy to put that adjustment in, either way, I'm happy.
I'm just asking democracy to check the resolution that's on the table and make sure that there isn't
A clash.
or a direct negative or
So we'll
anything.
come back to that. We'll come back to that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just in terms of, I was going to ask about the social housing as well. So it'll come back to detail. Come back in detail to council when? When will?
Just wait till the resolution comes up and we'll come back to that one, if that's okay.
The resolution here, if you want me
I'll
to.
get democracy to handle that.
Okay.
It's
27th
their
of June.
area, Sean, so, General Manager Sean, sorry.
Okay, so in essence, what I thought I heard in the answer was that we're just holding this amount of money in the budget, and how we might spend it will be determined later? Okay. We must have some idea about how much that, it's not just an ad hoc amount of money, we must have an idea about where that's going to be, how that's going to be spent or how useful it is. There must be some business case behind that.
Well, just to remind members, my understanding is that we approved this to go out to an external committee who are working up something to come back to us right now. And
so it's just lumpy timing.
And that, I understand that was come back on 21st of June, Andy?
27th of June.
27th of June.
So it's just unfortunate timing that we don't get this ahead of approving the budget. Anyway, the other question I have is around I, which is the alternative structure for swimmers and divers, and I couldn't put my hands on the discussion that we had previously about it, but it says to contribute to the development. Who else will refresh me on who else will be contributing to this structure, and how much confidence have we got that we can achieve this in this annual plan?
I'll ask Helen to respond to that. If you come forward, Helen. Yep, so then the people at home can hear you.
Up here, please. Oh.
I can't recall which meeting it came to, but it specifically speaks to the swimming platform or alternative swimming or jetty platform at or near the Hamilton Gardens.
Yeah.
So we put 150. We do need to do some investigations around that to fully understand the option and the cost and what funding requirements. There's potential for it to be achieved in this financial year, but we'll be able to give you more detail within the next few months.
So question just in terms of, again, of timing and process. While I might in principle want to do something about safety of swimming in that area, is there a problem with delaying this until we have all of that information to hand? In other words, we do the work first and then we bring it, so it comes to an annual plan maybe next year or such, because it just seems like a kind of a slightly finger in the air kind of approach to.
It is quite an urgent matter in terms of safety, so we would like to get that underway, and we do require some funding to at least start the investigation.
So this 150 will go to the some of that will go to the investigation, not the actual construction of any structure?
We do need to get the design started, and so that
within that, from that 150,000.
Can I just clarify, at the task force group meeting and then at the committee meeting, I undertook that the investigation would be carried out by staff and within current budgets.
Okay.
The 150,000 would be for, as Helen said, whatever decisions made, whether it's a swimming, jumping platform or an alternative jetty for vessels elsewhere near the gardens, there would have to be detailed design and money for construction. So the 150 is seed funding for the detailed design and the construction. I think Helen's right. Delaying this any further would be problematic, and actually us securing external funding, applying for it once we know where we're heading. Obviously that'll come back to council for a decision. So this really is getting approval for the funding so that we can go out for external funding and get the money and actually build the thing before next summer.
Okay, so the benefit of just having it in here right now is just to leverage other support and to get some of the.
Absolutely.
Okay, because that amount would never build a structure get near to building a structure, would it?
Well, that's unknown at this stage because it depends on what the solution, what the option is. So I wasn't very clear. I did mean detailed design. We have started looking at you know, some of that feasibility and investigations, but it's early stages. But it really depends what the solution is. Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you. So one just question, we had the debate on cat desexing before, so I'm not going to go over any of the same ground, but just to ask the question, if I was keen to see if there was support for an additional amount of money into community funding across all charities, when and how could I achieve that? Because I have raised it for the last 6 or 7 months at least, and I'm just interested, what would the correct process, rather than just dropping something in, how would I correctly go about seeing if there was a will to up the 300,000 of community funding, because as it is, there's going to be 300 for general charities across the single grant arena and 100 for animal welfare, which is 300 and 100. Do you see where I'm coming from? If I want to address the shortage in the community funding bucket generally, since it was 300% oversubscribed, how do I do that?
Ron, you want to respond to that?
Yep, so I guess the answer is that there's been sort of a number of opportunities for elected members to put potential items for the annual plan into the proposed annual plan. So we're at the point now where we've resolved not to consult, and we've assessed all of the items that are in here for significance and financial implications, etc. So there is probably, I would say, some risk in adding new things in, or trying to add new things in at this stage, because I think it would be challenging for elected members to be confident that they had all the information in front of them to make such a decision, and this is really kind of the last opportunity to make such a decision before the...
No, I know, I get that, but things like we've heard other councillors say, things change, information comes to hand. At the time that we were asked if there were any more projects, the degree to which we were oversubscribed for community grants wasn't well known to us in this. It was worse than last year, but we didn't know that at the time, and we have just dropped 100,000 in specifically for animal welfare. If we were to put 100,000 in for the broad fund, would that trigger significance? This hasn't.
No, it wouldn't trigger significance necessarily, but I think that the difference is that with the cat desexing proposal, information has gone out to elected members as part of the agenda to be considered in advance of the meeting. So if there was another option or a proposal put on the table today, the question we would have to answer is whether elected members had enough information in front of them to be able to make such a decision.
Fair enough. So the information that came through Community and Services Committee wouldn't be sufficient, because there was quite a good discussion at that committee. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to find a way forward, because I do strongly feel
Can I jump in and offer a solution for
about this.
So firstly, any decision, council elected members can make any decision between now right up to the date we sign off the annual plan. That's your prerogative as elected members. But the closer we get to that decision, the more at risk those decisions are. So to Sean's point, if you go way back to the beginning of the position, go out and it gets included in the document, there wasn't the initial papers, it's more robust. And as we close on that date, it gets less and less robust. I mean, I think the way forward here is that because I don't think it is significant, I just don't necessarily think all the information is available here. There's nothing stopping an elected member requesting via the Chief Executive or the Mayor that a paper comes back outside the annual plan round with all the information attached to it to reassess, because we can overspend budgets if you choose to, if you make that decision based on robust information. At this point in time, we don't have that robust information to have that debate. So I'd much rather continue the path we're going and take it off cycle and have that discussion at a later date. And it may well be that the resolution from that discussion is that Council considers bringing forward to the next 10-year plan an increased budget of 25%, and we roll it into the next 10-year plan, where all other aspects of the budget can be considered as a whole as well.
So the only option to me at this time is to, what you're saying, I make a recommendation today to ask you to do that work. We kind of discussed that at Community and Services and asked for that work to be done next year, and then this arrived, and now I'm thinking I jolly well wish I'd promoted the community funding.
Yeah, you can include a recommendation that we do the work. I think that's probably the best way of doing it.
If I put in an amount, you'll second it.
I told you that a year ago.
Thank you. All right, then I'll put something up. I suspect it'll be lost, but it'll be the same quantum as is allocated to cat desexing to put into the general community fund. Because, you know, I am thinking of all those other charities that missed out. That's where I'm going with this. I'm not
Okay,
actually trying to be...
so we'll take that as a further motion.
Thank you. Got it?
So that will be KJ, and we need to work out, just staff to work out the effect on the budget that will make. So if you can be working on that in the background and get that information distributed, please.
So just for the benefit of staff working on that, is the proposal for an extra $100,000 a year per year from 1920.
So obviously we'll need to know the impacts of that as well.
As well as, not instead of.
As well as, because I'm not contesting.
Yes. So for the remaining 9 years of the 10-year plan.
That's what I have to do, just to...
Okay, Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to, like Councillor Angela, I'd like to ask us to vote on E separately, the 5 additional full-time E-safety people.
Okay, the motion's been put and seconded, so if people want to pull things out, we need to be clear back earlier when I called it. I'll accept what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't want to just shout out and be improper, so I just waited my turn politely.
You're still improper.
Yeah. So has anyone else got anything else?
No good turn there. Come on.
Hang on, you get my fire in there.
That's why I jumped in right at the very start with my bullshit. Just be like
Gary, no problem.
just go totally out of turn.
Or anyone else.
Make sure you're on the record. You can
Safety.
Oh, this one, extending the city safe out to the...
$230 grand a year. You know, the one that
one that I picked, yeah. The one that I shat all over my principles for.
Yeah. You just found some new principles.
I have principles. If you don't like them, I have other principles.
Yeah, I was left gobsmacked.
You got this, Sean.
That is significant.
Have any, can elected members listen, Gary? Councillor Gary, this is important. I don't want to keep going over and over and over this as the meeting goes on. We already agreed to something. I've agreed now, Ryan, next time to speak up, because don't wait your turn for something like this. It's been moved and seconded, it makes it awkward. So myself and Councillor Jeff will withdraw our motion to accommodate your E being heard, being debated and questions held together, with D to J, with K and E being debated and questions asked on them, but voted on separately. So has anyone else got any others they would like to do that for? Councillor Leo.
Jay.
Okay, so I think okay, this is too much, so we'll take everything separately. We'll go all the way through. So get your sleeping bags out, guys. All right, because we're now debating and going through them one at a time. Yes,
As you had said, debate and question together, but we'll just vote separately?
Well, it's a lot of variations. We're nearly got separate ones for everyone now. So we've got K, we've got D, we've got, what did you say, Leo? J, we've got E, and we've got I. So,
in some way to councillors, so you could debate and take the vote separately for D through to I and debate.
what we'll do is we'll treat them all as one motion and we'll vote on them separately, okay, to try and keep it moving forward.
With the exception of the further motion.
Okay. Okay, so if you prefer, we'll take them all separately. So that's where we're going, because everybody's got to be happy. So we're starting with, and I only want questions on D. Okay, there are no questions on D. There are. Councillor Siggy.
Thank you. Thank you. I just I wanted to have assurance, or can you give me assurance that NZTA is keen on being part of that traffic study on Greenwood, Kahikatea Drive area, as keen as we are?
So the funding that we've put in there is for us to do our own study on the local road. So when it's apparent to us that Southern Links is not going to happen anytime soon, so we're asking NZTA to work with us to look at options for staging Southern Links. But we need to know as local authority what some of the impacts on our local roads are, even if the full local road was, if the full Southern Links was built. So they've given an indication that they will work with us, but the main point of the study is for us to look at our local road networks and how we can ensure we don't get all sorts of inappropriate rat running, particularly down the Kahikatea Street extension from Karamea Road. There'll be a real problem with that turning into the state highway if we don't look at our local road network.
Okay, excuse me. We've debated and we've been through this. And excuse me, stop. We've had questions on this, we've debated this, and we've been through it now twice already. I only want new questions that are relevant, that are new information, since we've already been through it twice, we've voted on it twice, it's a position of council, so new... You finished, Councillor Paula?
Yes, thank you.
Do you want to share with what you're saying with the rest of us? Okay, so Councillor Siggy, new questions on new information, or one of these Councillor Paula's is a new motion, so that obviously that will be much broader.
Yeah, that's all I want to ask. Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
It wasn't a question, I was going to speak in the debate on it.
Okay, so it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dave. We'll move to debate. Councillor Dave.
Simply.
So this is on D.
Look, ideally, this should be something that's mostly funded by NZTA because it's their road. But the trouble is with the pathetic design of our roading network a few decades ago, that's become a major bottleneck for traffic and a major safety hazard for other users, both car users and bicycle users, bus users, the whole works in that area. It's next to impossible to get into that part, in and out of that part of Dinsdale, sort of Road Street area, through Kahikatea Drive at certain times of the day, both morning and evening. That time period where it's a hassle and a safety problem is getting worse. We need to design something for the future that works for us while NZTA are farting around. I changed the F word there, Gary, thank you. So while we shouldn't have to do this, we do have to for good practical reasons for the city.
So I'll just dive in here. I propose this. This is about us putting up $150,000 to design, look at the traffic movements in that area and look at the road designs in that area for a $10 million spend, which we believe is around about what it will cost to sort out the most offending intersection in the area, to bring that forward ahead of Southern Links. because there's a huge amount of industrial area in behind there which is having trouble being developed because we can't get the vehicles effectively and efficiently onto the roading network. So this is about us being proactive to try and bring a large amount of funding from NZTA forward to move the city forward and make it work better on that side of the river when we know that Southern Links is unlikely to happen in the short term. So, Councillor Leo.
Yeah, sure. Look, there is an issue at Kaikatea Drive and State Highway 1 intersection. I think we're jumping the gun a little bit because once that expressway gets open in another 2 years' time, we will then see a decrease in the amount of traffic on State Highway 1, which is bypassing Hamilton City. Simple answer there is left turn only out of Kaikatea Drive, and it won't take motorists or heavy motor vehicle operators too long to realise that the obvious way is to use the traffic light signals up at Kalani Road. Why spend all that money at this point in time?
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I do support this one. This is core business for us, although it perhaps should be funded by the NZTA. And I just urge you to remember that this is not too far away from Peacocks, and a lot of that traffic will come down this area. So, and I take on board what Leo's saying, but I think I'm not too concerned about the 2 or 3 year delay between the developments. So I think this is very much a core job for us to be doing, and we should be doing it sooner rather than later.
So just using my right of reply, I'll just remind Councillor Leo that to get on to the traffic lights at Greenwood Street, Kalani Road, you can't get there without going through an uncontrolled intersection on the corner of Higgins and Kalani, or Duke. And so there's no, you go straight up Higgins, you've still got to get across Kalani Road before you get to the traffic lights. So we're in debate, so I'm just reminding you that you can't get off that network onto a set of traffic lights without going through an uncontrolled intersection somewhere first. All right, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is declared carried, 11 for, 1 against.
Okay, we could go to the second motion, which is E. So yes, sure, Councillor Angela can move this one, seconded by Councillor James. Debate, Councillor Angela.
Look, I hope members support this. As you know, our City Safe in Hamilton is, in my view, world class. We do lead the country with our City Safe units, and I think it's imperative for local government to do what it can to make sure that we provide a safe city for our residents. And we know that resources from police are stretched, and we do have a role to play. So this is a trial for 12 months, and I look forward to being around the table in some form in 12 months and being able to extend it. That would certainly be my wish. And I also look forward to the positive response that we get from this new expanded service from our suburbs, because I think we do need it, and it will benefit this citywide as well as the success that we've had in the central city.
Councillor Ryan.
Thanks, Chair. I don't think it is a trial. My understanding is it's $2.5 million over the 10-year plan as has been projected. I appreciate the work that City Safe has done and the intention of Councillor Angela and James here.
Sorry, point of order, it says trial and resolution.
Can we clarify whether
Yeah, I had already asked the Chief Executive to clarify that, so. Hang on, can you work on that while the member continues with this debate, please?
I appreciate that City Safe has been very successful in town, and I think in some ways we've just pushed the issues out into the suburbs, so that's an arguable point as well. Also, I think this is really duplicating the work of the New Zealand Police. police last year started a 3-year process to have 1,800 more police officers throughout New Zealand, 127 of them in Waikato. I'd rather support the work of 5 or 10 organisations through Councillor Paula's proposal than invest in this process, which I said originally is not Council's core business.
Okay, so in reply to the point of order, it is a trial for 1 year.
So it's only showing in the budget for year one of the annual plan.
That's correct.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Oh, look, this is actually what we should be doing. It's upon us as city leaders to actually try and ensure the safety of our citizens here. The unfortunate thing is about the New Zealand Police, they can't be everywhere at every single time. And though there's been 1,800 police promised and 127 coming to the Waikato, as not the city, they've lost around about 70 through attrition. So the number there doesn't really fluctuate that much. Now, City Safe do an amazing job around the city with the limited powers they have. And if anybody goes out to the suburbs in Frankton, Dinsdale, Rototuna, Flagstaff, and sees the amount of people out there that actually give the residents grief with demanding money, knocking on car doors and everything else and approaching them, I think we do need City Safe to expand to the suburbs, because the police can't be everywhere and they are not attending those jobs. So we have to be seen to do something as a city, and working in cooperation with police is the way to try and ensure the safety of our citizens and to stop the sort of vagrant begging on the streets.
Councillor Dave.
Yeah, look, while I appreciate Councillor James and Councillor Angela's points on this, I'm looking a little bit at the history of City Safe. When we proposed a 1-year trial in 2002 for City Safe at the cost of $250,000. I don't recall that trial ever being reviewed. It's still continuing, and it's much, much bigger than $250,000 nowadays. This is a police job, and to have a flying squad, which is really what this is, of non-police doing a police job, sort of begs the question about what's happening in our community. I realise Councillor James is quite right, the police can't be everywhere, but nor can our own flying squad. That's not going to be enough either. It's never going to be enough until we get some cultural changes, some welfare system changes, a whole lot of other changes in the community. I would rather, if this was tied to a real genuine sit down and look with the government, responsible government agencies and local agencies in this area about how we can change things around, how we can get, for instance, the people that are providing housing for people in the CBD to be working much more broadly, geographically than they are now. I wouldn't mind it then, but I am dubious, like young Councillor Ryan, that this is actually going to be either cutting the mustard to do the job that's wanted, or our job to do that. I think our job is to see that that happens, but not to spend all to pay for all the money for the extra policing services ourselves, and police without powers to really, at the end of the day, do anything. We have moved the problem out from the CBD. It is becoming, as predicted at the time, becoming a problem in the wider areas of the city. Look, if we have this flying squad, we may help Dinsdale and Rototuna and Hillcrest shops, by the way, I've seen it, but we'll just move it out to Cambridge and to Ngarawahia and to Raglan and other places like that, you know, because we're not actually addressing the real problem, I don't think. Tamahiri would be all right, sorry. Yeah.
Councillor Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I will be supporting this. I have sympathy for Councillor Ryan and Councillor Dave's points there. And I understand that there are a lot deeper underlying social issues that we're nowhere near addressing or getting anywhere near. But in terms of the police thing, in a perfect world, yes, the police would be doing it, but it ain't a perfect world. It's never going to happen, I don't think. I think actually that City Safe, however this has come into being, I think City Safe is actually takes us ahead of the pack of other councils. I think there's a lot of councils who look at us and think, gosh, I wish we had that. And I I've seen them do some excellent work in the suburbs. In Dinsdale, there was one very hairy situation where they got involved and they diffused it. And it's messy work, it's complicated work at times, it's a sensitive area, it can be uncomfortable. I don't envy what these guys have to do. I do support extending this service out to the suburbs. You're right, we may well have driven the problems out there, but let's fix the problems out there as well. Let's at least confront the problems out there. This is a service that actually makes residents feel a bit more secure. They feel like there's a visible reminder that someone is out there monitoring or keeping an eye out. They feel like there's someone they can go to if there are uncomfortable, difficult situations. And they've made an impact in the central city. And I think they can make an impact further out. It's not the perfect thing. I mean, police should be. They will never do this job again, in my belief. And I think this is a new way of doing things. I think the city has to take a bit more of this responsibility because it's the only way we're actually going to get a visible presence. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I agree with what Dave and Ryan have said, so I won't repeat that, and just say that if we don't do this, that's $230,000, which more than pays for D. So we get an $80,000. We get our roading plan for Greenwood's Kahikatea Drive paid for, and we have $80,000 left over to reduce that rates increase.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I am going to support this as a trial because I do believe that the trial in the CBD was successful at deferring and antisocial behaviour in the city central area, and as a consequence, I think that's right. We have seen some of this behaviour move to other suburban retail areas, and that's to the detriment of shop owners and the public together. I think all of our public places like that should be as safe as we can make them, and this is one tool to assist with that. But I would like to think that it was properly monitored and that we did get the report back at the end of the year that shows us that this is in fact working and how it is working. Otherwise, we'll need to make some adjustments. But this is one thing that I think is worth testing.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Look, roading is important, and so is safety for our people. And I do agree with Councillor Taylor that he says we're not in a perfect world, and the police cannot be everywhere and do everything. And so, for me, it's important to do that trial. And I think it's a great way to look at all the other agencies that can be included, that can. Help make a difference in this area. And no, I don't want it further pushed out. And Tamahiri, I don't think has a town centre yet, so I don't think we can push it there. We need to address, just like Councillor McPherson said, we need to address the underlying issues. And with this trial, I think we can look at the underlying issues and really see what's happening in our suburbs and what's going on. I mean, I live close to Dinsdale and I see it every day, what's happening there. And it's not always a pretty picture. So really looking forward to that trial. And I'm sure in a year's time, we will have made a difference and we will understand what's happening in all our suburbs a lot better.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Look, I'll support it as a trial. It's a very subjective area, this, whether City Safe works or not. I mean, we all have our opinion of what we think a City Safe officer should look like. I personally don't feel enormously a lot safer having seen a City Safe officer walk past, but as a lot of speakers today have said, it's a very difficult and complicated area. I don't believe they are hired thugs or they're like the mongrel mob who stand outside the mosque or anything to that effect. I believe, having researched this a bit more, that they are a conduit between those agencies like the Outfit and Garden Place and our community arm and the more underprivileged and vulnerable society. So I like the fact that they are a channel that we can be flexible with. But I keep coming back to our community outcomes, and I think Councillor Siggy alluded to it there before. Part of our job is to keep people, or to give people the feeling of safety, because one of our community outcomes is to be a livable city, and it's what we've all committed to. So sometimes you have to do some of the odd stuff that gets you closer to that mark. It is a trial. I don't necessarily think that we have eradicated antisocial behaviour from the central city by any means. I don't feel a lot safer. I get just as many comments from people. I actually think rather than push them out to the suburbs, it's actually just grown. There are now beggars outside McDonald's, apparently. A friend told me. I haven't been through McDonald's in a long time. But they're just changing their tactics. And it's a very sophisticated game of cat and mouse that's being played at the moment. So while I don't think City Safe are a substitute for the police or are necessarily intimidating, I believe they are at least an arm to do something about it. So I'll be really interested in seeing how this trial goes.
Councillor Robb.
Thank you, Chair. Look, my only question is how effective 200 hours, which comes from the 5 full-time equivalents, will be effective citywide. And I think at the end of 12 months, when we come to review this trial, we'll probably, in a typical way, review the trial for another 12 months, but adding further funding in to actually make it more effective than what it could be. So, and we've done that with the CBD parking. We're into the 3rd year of our trial with that. So, look, I'm a little bit cynical about how long these trials go on for. Councillor Dave mentioned one that appears to have started in 2002, which is still a trial. And so, whilst I think there may be some effect, there may be some good effects from it, I'm just uncertain that we're really going to get value out of spending $230,000 on a half on doing the job in a half-baked way.
Would you like a right reply, Councillor Angela?
I just wanted to respond to a couple of the comments around the table from elected members who say that feel that this isn't our job. And I remind them, when is keeping people in our city safe not our job? And as I have used in a separate debate on this issue, when I put this forward, everything that we do in local government, our very existence is based on keeping people safe. I have said this before. We deliver water to keep people safe. We build roads to keep people safe. We create bylaws and policies on alcohol and prostitution and gambling to keep people safe. Yes, it's not ideal that we have to fill this gap that the police can't do, but we should be working with them. And can I remind elected members, we also have night owls out there keeping people safe. They're volunteers. They've been going for years. Businesses hire security guards to keep people safe in our city. We have Neighbourhood Watch, another volunteer organisation, to keep people safe. We have a responsibility to play our part. And as we've seen in the past, when there is a presence of uniform, some of us will remember back in the day, department store buildings used to put those cardboard cutouts of police in uniform. The presence of a uniform, whether it's police or something else, does disperse antisocial behaviour, and it does make people feel safe. So it's really important to me that residents in our city feel safe. I think it's our role, and I am confident that this trial will work, that there will be benefits, significant benefits, and that in the future this will continue. So I urge members to remind themselves that our very existence, our reason for being here is to keep the people in our city safe.
The motion is carried, 8-4, 4 against.
Okay, we'll now go, and if members are agreeable, we'll take F and G together as one item because they go hand in glove. So I'll move seconded, but that's got a change to it, which...
No, I need to talk to that change. We've now identified the resolution. So the resolution from the previous meeting in terms of the 10-year plan was specifically in respect of a community land trust. So it would be changing the intent of that resolution, won't it?
I've given some advice to me, Andrew, about amended wording to this in order to align with the live resolution.
So you're...
And so have a look at...
reflects that. So
have
I
it-
retract my comments. Okay.
Okay, so I'll move seconded by councillor Mark, since he's jumping up and down, wanting to. So let's go straight to the vote on this one, can we? Thank you.
So I just wonder if you'd explain what that's just done. What was the problem that you had?
It doesn't really achieve anything apart from providing peace of mind that you guys still have a decision to make in the future like you always had to in the first place.
Okay, so we're voting on F and G together.
The motion is carried, 11 for, 1 against.
Okay, so Jeff is moving H, seconded by councillor Mark. Can we go straight to the vote on this one? H.
The motion is carried, 11 for, 1 against.
Just for the live stream, we'll get you to read out the motion. Sorry, but I'm just aware that this has changed.
Yeah, we just... it's more for the live stream, just in case any viewers following us from home, that H was the proposal for funding for to develop an updated 20-year vision for the central city. And I, which we're moving to now, is the proposal for inclusion in the budget of an additional 150,000 of capital funding to contribute to the development of an alternative structure for swimmers and divers or vessels at Hamilton Garden.
So that's moved by myself, seconded by, moved by councillor Jeff, seconded by myself. Can we go straight to the board on this one? So no, it's I. I, Leo, on the separate document. Okay, so we're in debate. Councillor, are you okay to let your... Yep. Go ahead.
Jump into the river, which really goes against any safety principles, and I don't really see this as a council responsibility. And I think what we should be doing is, if we want to spend this sort of money, put it into water safety education.
Councillor Paula.
I probably will support this, but at the same time, I am a little bit nervous about this. It's only because I trust the staff with their assessment of how urgent this is, and I certainly don't want anyone to be harmed. But I have concerns about how this will actually meet the real need of swimmers. People tend to jump in wherever they feel fit, off a tree, off a rope, off whatever, and will this be the solution? But also, normally, I would like to have seen a business case around this to get an idea of how much it's going to cost, what kind of ideas are up for consideration, and we've got none of that. We've just got a placeholder of budget, which I think is a little bit uncomfortable for me. However, I'll leave it till the next stage, and hopefully the information's not far away and we'll be able to assess in more detail at that time.
Councillor Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Andrew. Yeah, look, we do have a real safety issue here. a real health and safety issue. I was a slow convert to it, but the more I've learnt about it, the more worried I've become. We do have this potential conflict between the Waikato River Explorer and swimmers and divers and bombers, or what do you want to call them, in there. And like it or not, we've got a problem. And staff have been tearing their hair out trying to find a solution to this, and staff are worried. And the reason we haven't got a business case yet is we're in a hurry. Summer's coming again in 6 months, I can't wait. But, you know, we are going to have people back in that river, and we are going to have the same conflict again. And we don't want someone to die. And we are worried about it. People shouldn't be jumping in there maybe, but they have done for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in that spot. And, you know, it is a city responsibility. If someone...
No talking during debate, please.
It is a city responsibility. I mean, if someone dies, we're going to be feeling it real bad. So that's the reason for the urgency there. And it's a small sum of money because we don't expect to pay for the whole damn thing. We're going to be looking for others to pay. But we need to get that money in there so we can start getting the work done, and we can draw funding from other places. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, just remember this isn't necessarily a platform for jumpers. It's actually taking the boat away from the jetty because, as Jeff said, the jumpers have been there for years and years and years. So we're actually, rather than trying to stop them from doing something that they've been doing, is go, let's actually move this commercial vehicle out of the way because the frequency of the boat operator and the volume of people in the water, it puts us as council, as an owner, at risk of a liability or a death, and frankly it's not worth that risk. And as Jeff said, we're only putting forward 150k. The jetty's likely to cost around 500,000, so we're only doing a seed money, and council is looking at external funding for that as well. So to me it's common sense.
Councillor James.
Mayor Andrew, this is quite a hard one because I actually voted against this the first time it came around, but I've just voted for CitySafe to go out into the suburbs and that to keep our citizens safe. And this is something to try and keep our citizens safe because some have been churned up by boat propellers. Wouldn't be nice for our conscience. So it would be probably hypocritical of myself to vote against it when I've just voted for another city safety measure. So I'll be voting for it.
Councillor Jeff, do you want to write a reply? Oh, sorry, I didn't see those. Councillor Siggy.
Thank you. Just quickly, I was a bit not sure whether I was going to vote for or against it, but I have to say now that we're talking about safety for the people, and we want to encourage more traffic on our river, and we're building more jetties and everything. So we really need to finally look ahead, be earlier on board with what's going to happen for the future. So I'm really glad than retrofitting afterwards and having something already, maybe some accidents happening. And I just do not want to wait for accidents to happen. So it's nice to see that we're doing something before there's more traffic on the river. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
I'm sort of going the opposite way of Councillor Jeff, although I'm going to vote the same way. And that Councillor James, beg your pardon, in that I was more enthusiastic about this beforehand than I am now, having seen how we're going with the other jetty. I'm worried that this is quite a loose, open-ended arrangement, but I'm very, and that we're putting 150 grand up to see what can be done, and we haven't really put any parameters around how much we're going to spend on the whole project. So I'll be watching this with very open eyes, and so I'm probably in the same camp as Paula on that one. It is about safety, but I'm also conscious of our play strategy that we've put in to say, hey, let's make Hamilton a far more playful place. So this does speak to that. So for that reason, I will be supporting it, but keeping an eye on it.
Councillor Dave.
Yeah, look, Councillor Jeff has convinced me. I was unaware that people have been jumping off this jetty for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. I absolutely think it is it's appropriate for us to do that since we've had a jetty there for such a long time.
So that part of the river has a natural eddy that comes down the river and comes back in, so the jumpers actually get brought back into land. And if there's anywhere that's safe on the river, and I fully admit it's not a safe river, but there is a natural eddy that takes the jumpers back onto the sand there, so in that place. And I believe that the jumpers have been jumping for a lot longer than the commercial operators have been operating there. So I'm very supportive of separating them. Councillor Jeff, would you like a right of reply? Okay, we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried, 9-4, 3 against.
So now we now move to J, which is to enable a response to findings from the seismic assessment of Hamilton City Council buildings. So that's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Paula. We'll go straight to the board to vote.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Now, K, which is the approval for $100,000 for a contestable fund for cat desexing. Can we go straight to the board on this one? We've got discussion? No? Can we go? You should have that up on your... that should have come up on your diligent. But we can put it on the board. Okay, we'll get it on the board. Sorry? So it's moved by Councillor Mark, seconded by myself. Councillor Paula.
To reiterate the whole discussion I had earlier on this, I am going to vote in support of it. I just think that the way that this has been achieved is not the correct process, and that it would have been better done through a holistic look at community grants, in which a portion of those community grants would be allocated to animal welfare and a portion to other matters of importance. But in the next motion, we are going to at least get the opportunity to explore willingness to support the other charities alongside this one. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming up from. It's more about the process of which we have landed in this decision that I'm bothered about.
Councillor Mark is the mover of the motion. Would you like to come in first?
No, I'll
second,
wait for the right reply, thank you.
You can have both if you like. You can have both if you would like.
No.
No. Okay, that's all right. Councillor
No,
Gary.
I'll wait till I hear.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I'm very sympathetic to the whole issue involved here, but I think we're missing a couple of really important things. We haven't identified who is actually responsible for this thing. I don't think it's our responsibility. The second thing that concerns me also is I don't want it limited to charitable organisations. If it is our responsibility and we want to do the job properly, we would go and get the best supplier. Now, they might be the best supplier. I'm not knocking them out. I'm not saying that Paws, what are they called?
Paws for Life.
Paws for Life are not the best supplier. But I don't think we should limit it to charitable organisations. So I think there's a couple of glaring faults in this good-hearted recommendation, which I can't support at the moment.
Councillor Dave.
Yeah, look, I think there's something catching here, because I actually agree with Gary. I totally support work being done in this area. I even think there's a case, at least in the short term, for this council to fund it. And I wouldn't argue whether 100,000 is the right amount or the wrong amount. I don't know enough about that. It's certainly going to need a decent amount of money given the number of cats and the spread of the problem, the rapid spread of the problem. But I do not agree that charitable, registered charities is the only way to go. In fact, I just about oppose that, not because of Paws for Life. I think that registered charities may well be good. There may be incorporated societies who are not registered charities, which is a legitimate legal status. There may be private contractors. In fact, I could imagine in some areas of the country, if not here, private contractors would be the best people to do this. I imagine that some councils, I suspect not our council, would be the best people to do this. And it would be, I would like to see, and I've had some run-ins, to be honest, with our animal control unit, because I think that they should be taking a greater responsibility in the cat area. And I would like to see some developments in that area. So my problem is not with the opening sentence or with one, it's part two. That's the one I've got the problem with. It's far too restrictive, and it's not so much a value for money thing. I don't think you're going to get the right gamut of organisations applying for it because you're so restrictive. That's the problem. If it said remove that must be a registered charity, if it talked about the outcome that you needed rather than the type of group, I could support this.
Councillor Mark.
I think Siggy was going to speak first.
Okay, Councillor Siggy.
Mayor Andrew, just really quickly, look, I did vote for it before, but I will actually vote against it now. I had to think about that, because really when we think about what the other contestable fund gets, and then which is only $310,000, and we're giving for desexing cats only 100,000. It just doesn't add up in my mind. This is just so, the gap is so huge. So for me at the moment, I think we need to look at other ways, or being able to help them in other ways. I know it is a problem in the city. I understand that. I've just heard my daughter told me about Rome doing something interesting with cats. I'm not sure what's happening there. Maybe we should check what Rome is doing. But that might be something to look at. But at the moment, for me, it's I won't support this.
It's, to be fair, before Mark has its right of reply, I'd like to move an amendment, which I have a seconder, which is to remove the words applicants must be a registered charity. Part two.
Councillor Dave.
Yeah.
I don't want you to say any more. You have spoken, so you
No,
can't.
I'm allowed, well...
You have spoken,
okay.
sorry.
Then that's fine, I'll
excuse
vote
me.
against it. And
Councillor
so
Dave.
will a lot of other people.
Dave.
Yep. We're trying to, I think the whole of today...
Councillor Dave, where I'm heading here is that everyone's heard what you're proposing, and if somebody else around this table wants to pick that up who hasn't spoken, this is the opportunity.
No, my point of order relates to the way this meeting's been run today, which has been very good, because we've been open. For instance, you putting up a motion, then changing it a couple of times, then withdrawing it to allow a decent debate. And I think that's the same sort of situation I'm suggesting to you.
So, excuse me, stop. No. I haven't spoken yet, so I will move what Dave has proposed. If there's a seconder who hasn't spoken, who wants to second that? Did I? Oh.
But Andrew, if I see Andrew as the mover of the, is it appropriate for me to speak at the moment? To be useful as the mover of that, I see where you're going, and I'll support you in that. So we could just that bit and pull out the charity reference if it means it's going to get support around the table, because the outcome will be the same.
Can we just wait for a minute?
As if that's appropriate.
Actually, I could make that.
So we'll just have a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 1:30.